very safe.
Yeah. Have you ever had an incident where you felt unsafe, Mo? Or has it been pretty good?
No, it's good.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Because it just seems like, to me, like it would be a little scary, but.
Yeah, I think it depends on what you're expecting when you're going in.
That's true.
And like, I don't think Hollywood helps in
You
terms
are
of
right.
how they like paint prisons and inmates. It's not like that. They're humans. Like,
Yeah.
they have real stories and real pain. And once you see that and you interact with them as a person, like your idea of prison changes completely.
Yeah. That's really good to know. Okay. So Father Norfolk, were you assigned to this? Did you ask for this ministry? How did this happen?
Yeah, my interest started in college, actually.
Okay.
I went to the same college that Mo did in Ohio. And so we did some prison ministry as part of college. And then when I went to the seminary in Colorado, we did some juvenile detention work as well as a federal prison. So the interest started in my 20s. And then I had a family member who went to prison.
Oh, okay.
And so that definitely opened the door as I would talk to this family member about their experience inside of prison, what was missing, what the difficulties, the challenges were. And then, as I knew that both of the current prison chaplains were about to retire, then I started at least presenting the idea and the desire to Bishop Swain at the time that I was interested in the ministry.
Sure. So this has really been a long process for you of building to this,
Yeah.
which is good.
Yeah.
And you've enjoyed it so far.
Yeah, I mean, every day is so different when you walk inside the doors, who you're going to see, what you're going to experience. Because I don't want to give a false impression that it is a dangerous place.
Sure.
I mean, there is violence and there's fights and things like that happen. But I believe that there are means to help decrease that and give us as volunteers a safe experience.
Right. I assume they aren't they're putting you in a safe environment. They're not putting you in any kind of dangerous setup to begin with. So that's got to help and make everybody feel better.
Yeah.
So, Mo, how did you get interested in this part?
Yeah, well, the short version of it is Father Jeff got assigned, and I've known him from before. And so I reached out and I said, is that a thing? Like, do people volunteer? Or is that just like a thing that you can do in college at Franciscan or whatever? And so I let him get his feet wet at the prison for a little bit. And then I filled out the paperwork and started volunteering. And I said, I'll give you 1 hour every other week.
Okay.
Like, I'll help with Bible study. And that quickly became every week for an hour, multiple times a week. And then, I just had this desire to do it full time because I see so clearly how the Lord's working in these men's lives, and like how when I see him working in their lives, he's working in my life as well.
Yeah.
So that's like the short answer to that.
The long version is longer than our show.
Not that
Maybe
long,
not.
but I really like the rough around the edges people.
Yeah. Oh, well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
You don't seem like a rough around the edges person, so that is kind of a surprise, though.
I think my heart definitely is rough around the edges.
There's a secret show or something you watch that no one knows about. That's the rough around the edges, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, can you describe like a typical, what happens when you go there? How does this, you said it's different every day. So give us a typical, if that's possible, or a couple ideas of what you do when you get there.
Yeah, so this morning we went to the county jail.
Okay.
We got there at 7:30, tried to do an initial visit because many hours of the day they're on lockdown, so we can't get in and see them.
Okay.
So we have to try and go when they can be released from their cell, where there's not a meal or where there's not some event. Some of them work during the day, so we can't see them during those hours as well. So usually a couple hours in the morning are open, a couple hours in the afternoon, a couple hours in the evening.
Okay.
So it's usually 2-hour chunks. We go in, try and call a man from his cell up to our office to visit one-on-one. Or if it's a Monday evening, we have a Bible study, so they sign up and they come up for that event.
Okay.
And we get to visit with them. So it's either a one-on-one, it's an event like a Bible study, or a Catholic Mass on a Saturday evening or a Thursday morning. So usually there's a pretty strong intention of why we're going in, to see someone or to host some kind of event.
Okay. And do they ask for this ministry? Like if they're there's like, okay, I really want to talk to a priest or a chaplain. Or is it you're going to do that? How does that, is it all volunteer on their part? I guess is what I'm wondering. Yeah? Mo. Father Norfolk's looking at you. He wants you to answer this.
Yeah, for the most part, it's like their desire.
Okay.
Like, we can go cell front and like ask if they want to visit or
Oh, okay.
something. And so if they're not interested, then that's it.
Yeah.
Their free will. That's
Right.
great. But a lot of times the guys are asking like, I want to follow up with this conversation, or I had this question, or I want to know more about the Catholic Church.
Mm-hmm.
And then they can fill out what's called a kite, which is just like this paper where they say like the request, like I want a one-on-one, or I want to go to
Sure.
confession, or different things like that.
Okay. And are there lots of guys who are not Catholic that you guys talk to? Yeah.
So, for example, Saturday evening at 7:00, we have Mass, and out of the 25 that come, probably half of them are not Catholic.
Oh, wow.
Um,
Is that because are there other like chaplains from other faiths that go in there? There are. Okay.
yeah, you would be surprised how many groups, and not only Christian groups, Muslim.
Okay.
There's a group called the Satru, which is a pagan group that
Mhm.
has many gods that they worship.
Mm-hmm.
Everything from a nonviolence group. So many groups are part of it from religious standpoint, from secular standpoint. And so you have lots of chaplains, volunteers that are coming in and out to host events throughout the week.
So they have some options.
Yeah, many
Yeah.
options.
Yeah. And it's really nice to know that some who aren't Catholic are want to participate in that. Do they ever give you any indication, like, were they interested in the Catholic faith before they ended up in prison? Or is it something that has kind of come to them while they're there? Do you ever get any indication of that?
Both.
Both.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like there's a guy that I have been talking with who he was never baptized, but his family's Catholic, like culturally Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until prison where he was really starting to be moved towards like, I think I do want to take this seriously. I want to talk about getting baptized and receiving my sacraments.
Mm-hmm.
But then you have other guys who they don't really know what it means to be Christian. Or like one guy in Bible study was like, wait, are you telling me God died? Like that's a thing? And I'm like, whoa, you don't know what Christianity
It doesn't even occur to us
is.
that
Yeah.
they don't know that, does it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Well, that's cool. Okay, so what are some ways that your ministry has had an effect on the men there, and sometimes women, obviously, but what have you seen for effect on them?
Yeah, a couple of things that I would initially respond to that. Because many of them come from broken families,
Mm-hmm.
it's our desire to definitely bring Christ's healing into their lives. And sometimes being in prison actually gives them a stable environment
Right.
where they can start over, where they can stop the chaos that they've been living, stop the addictions that they've been living. So the emotional aspect is very important, and especially the healing of the emotions, but also giving them an environment where they can express emotions in a healthy way.
Oh, sure.
That's not volatile, that's not hostile.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, for them to have a place where they can discover, who the heck am I? What's my purpose in my life? And who is the one who gave me this purpose?
Sure.
A relationship with God, an openness to the reality of who God is. Even if they came from a Christian environment, a Christian family, adopted family that was Christian, there were still so many difficulties in their families that wasn't a clear example, or that wasn't a stable example given to them. So they're really coming in with a lot of questions, sometimes misconceptions. And so a lot of it's question and answer. A lot of it is trying to help them just create a stable foundation of life,
Mm-hmm.
and helping them understand they're going to have to let go of some things,
Oh,
or
sure.
even some people in their
Mhm.
lives that are not
Which is
healthy.
really difficult.
Very difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. I hadn't really thought about the fact that, I mean, they really are coming from an unstable place. And this is going to sound weird. And sometimes I shouldn't say things when I say that first, that sometimes prison can be a good place at it's that point in someone's life where they can find a different direction. I mean, it's definitely, you don't want to end up there, but you can have a little time a resort might be better, but but wherever it happens, it happens. And then hopefully you can find God and someone's there to help you get there. That's why you guys are there.
Yeah, I mean, more than one guy has said to us that coming to prison actually saved my life.
Right. Right.
Because,
It's kind of what I was trying to get at. He was way more eloquent.
Yeah. So when they come to recognize that, and then they're open to see how God was actually there saving their life, then many times they'll open up and say, okay, God, if you've done this for me, what else do you want to do in my life? I'm
Right.
giving you this space and this time. And if they like to read, they can read all day long.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
there's plenty of things that they can read and study and learn. It's just a matter of how they'll use their time.
Do you guys give them access to that, or do they have access to materials and stuff in the prison?
We have a lot of books that
Okay.
we can let them borrow or give
Oh,
them. But then they also have a tablet where they have some, like an app with some books on it
sure.
too. So
Sure.
that's available to them. And
That's kind of nice. Mo, have you seen any like conversions while you've been there? Or is there a story you can tell that's a really good one?
yeah, there's a million stories.
I'm sure. I would hope so, because this is like difficult work. I'm sure it's emotional and difficult. So, okay, tell us one or two.
Yeah. So I think the one that comes to mind most clearly, Father and I were talking about this morning. There's this man. So he was one of the ones that never really was exposed to Christianity, grew up on a reservation, and he was coming to Bible study. And there was this point when my sister and I were having a conversation with him afterwards, and he was saying, well, you know, like, I don't know if I'm just kind of annoyed because Jesus didn't come to my people. Like, he just skipped like the Native Americans.
Sure.
He didn't come. And my sister, the quick thinking teacher that she is, goes, he didn't come to my people either. He didn't go to Ireland or Scotland or all these different places. And he's like, oh, okay then. And I'm like, well, yeah, if that's your perspective, that like Jesus came to all these people, but he just skipped your people. Like, yeah, I don't know if I'd be like gung ho about getting to know him either.
That's a good point.
But just through the couple years that I've known him and these conversations of like, what does Jesus want for your life? And like, I think the most beautiful thing that I've heard him say is, I'm different when I pray daily.
Oh, wow.
Like, my day is set off different because of this, and I don't respond to other things that I used to, like in anger. And I've just seen him like want to be more active in his kids' lives. And like, when I first met him, it was like, nah, they're good. Like, people are taking care of them. And now it's like, oh, I know what's going on in my kids' life. I know how they're doing in school. I know the health concerns that they have. Please pray for them. This is what's going on, and updating them. And it was just this beautiful gift to be able to see him want to be a father.
Right.
And want to like be good for his family.
Right.
Yeah.
That's really beautiful. It's good to know that. Well, I mean, I think we already know that encountering God can really change everything in your life. And that's such a great example of that. Father Norfolk, do you have any good stories?
Yeah, the biggest example I like to use with people is that we get to open the veil. They drive by this big brick building, stone building, and they have no idea what goes on inside of this prison building. And they see these people on TV, and we get to open the veil and say, well, that guy that you saw, yes, was very angry and had serious substance abuse issues, but 6 months ago, he was baptized and was confirmed and is now receiving communion and going to confession on a regular basis. You know, so when we get to share with them stories of, yes, he did this horrendous thing, but now here's where he is. Or this mother who has children and is concerned about her children is now working through a treatment program to get off of drugs so she can take care of her children.
Right.
Those are very important things for us to share because people know the statistics, they hear the stories, but they don't always know the personal dimension of the people's lives.
Right. Okay, great. So are there any saints that are especially good for those in prison, or that you've noticed seem to, I always say saints stalk us. When we need them, they're like, hey, you need me right now. Is there any particular saints that are really good for them?
Yeah, I'll start and I'll let Mo chime in too. Definitely Jesus himself was in prison. Many of the apostles were in prison. And then if we move 1900 years forward, probably the most common one, St. Maximilian Kolbe, who was in a concentration camp in Poland. Jacques Fesch is another one that we're learning about. He was in France and grew up Catholic, strayed away from his faith, eventually committed murder, but then had a conversion before he was put to the guillotine. And more, those that ministered to people in prison, for example, even if they themselves have never been in prison, or those who were imprisoned because of a war situation in the 20th century. We're learning more about military personnel that were captains in the military or priests and were imprisoned. St. Edith Stein, for example, Carmelite, was in a concentration camp. And so, yeah, I think people would be surprised in some ways at how many there actually
Yeah, for sure. Any you can come up with, Mo?
I mean, I think they're a fan of like the bold, like intensely
Sure.
passionate ones, like
That makes sense.
St. Paul, or St. Augustine, like the ones that like they've had kind of a rough life.
Sure.
And then they had this major conversion and now they're like full force for the Lord.
Yeah.
I think those are really inspiring to them.
St. Paul would be, and Augustine, but St. Paul would be a natural one because he really persecuted Christians and if in a different time may have been in prison for that had he not converted. So a very natural fit.
Yeah.
So what kind of impact has this ministry had on the two of you, do you think?
Yeah, I appreciate that question because oftentimes the question comes of how are we impacting them? But definitely any prejudices that I grew up with about race, about nationalities. The town I grew up in, maybe I knew 2 African-American kids.
Right.
Now I interact with African-Americans every day. So a lot of those prejudices have been able to fall away. Thanks be to God, He's expanded my heart to see beyond people's skin. But also the same thing, tattoos, earrings, a lot of that's passed away too because we know underneath the skin of people in that sense. So it's taught me to look deeper at people and to really give them a second deeper chance than what they say in gruff ways or what they look like in exterior ways. So I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah. Well, how about you?
Yeah, I think there's like 3 main things, if I have to summarize. Scripture, like hearing scripture when you're like in prison at mass, it's like, whoa, it sounds so different in here.
I bet.
Even just like how much they talk about prison in the Bible.
Yep.
I'm like, I didn't think about that before, but now I'm sitting next to someone who has a life sentence. This just hits me different.
Yeah.
And then just like a gratitude for being raised in the church and like the beauty that is the Catholic Church and how she understands human beings.
Right.
It's such a gift to like, I'm founded on that, but then also to be able to share that with people who don't understand that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the last one is just a deep understanding of like mercy and forgiveness in a new way.
Yeah.
Like hearing about these men's lives and like the crimes they've committed or whatever they want to share. And like, it's very easy for me to see like, wow, you had a really rough childhood. You had a lot of things working against you. But I can see your goodness, but you can't see your own goodness. And so I want to be able to reflect like how God made you good. And like, it's this beautiful and humbling place to try to tell someone like how you're made good.
Right.
And how you need to forgive yourself. And in learning about teaching them that, I'm like, oh, wow, I'm really hard on myself in this area of my life. Or like, I'm not merciful to myself and not saying I'm going to make excuses for myself, but like, I need to be gentle because like, I want this man who did these crimes to be gentle to like with himself
Right.
and allow the Lord to love him in that place.
Yeah.
But I need to learn that in a deep way too.
Yeah. Those are great.
Yeah.
All right, guys, we're out of time. We have to give some time to Dr. Bergwald in the beginning of the show. So thank you so much for being here and telling us about what you do. It was very eye-opening to me, and I hope to everybody else who's listening. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next week we will have Monsignor Charles Mangan will be back with us to tell us about his call to the priesthood. And it's a great conversation. I hope you will come and join us for that. That's it for us today. Join us next week for more Catholic Views.